The early summer breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass across the suburban neighborhood of Mapleton Heights. On the corner of Elm and Pine Street, two identical faces peered out from behind a makeshift cardboard stand. 10-year-old twins, Ellie and Ethan Morgan, had set up their toy sale with meticulous care, arranging their once-cherished possessions on a blue checkered blanket. A hand-painted sign in wobbly letters read, "Toys for sale, help our MOM." Ellie adjusted the row of stuffed animals, her fingers lingering on a worn teddy bear she'd slept with since she was 3. "Do you think anyone will actually stop?" she whispered to her brother, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. Ethan shrugged, his freckled face serious beyond his years. Mr. Wilson from next door said he would, and Mrs. Patterson promised to come after her doctor's appointment. He rearranged the collection of toy cars, making sure his prized red Corvette was prominently displayed. "We just need to sell enough. That's what matters." Behind the quiet determination in their matching hazel eyes lay a weight no child should carry. 3 months ago, their mother, Sarah Morgan, had collapsed while making dinner. The diagnosis came a week later, stage 3 lymphoma. The single mother of 2 had been the picture of health, a kindergarten teacher who jogged every morning before sunrise and volunteered at the community garden on weekends. The twins had overheard the conversation last night, their mother's voice breaking as she spoke on the phone with Aunt Jen. "The insurance won't cover the experimental treatment," Sarah had whispered, thinking her children were asleep. "And I've already borrowed against the house. I don't know what else to do, Jen. The standard protocol isn't working, and Dr. Lewis says this new treatment might be my best chance, but $30,000. I just don't have it." That night, as the house grew quiet, Ellie and Ethan met in the hallway between their bedrooms. "We have to do something," Ethan had insisted, his small hands clenched into fists. And so the Morgan twins' toy sale was born. 3 hours into their first day of business, they had made exactly $27.50. A decent start, but nowhere near enough. "Maybe we should lower the prices," Ellie suggested, adjusting the hand-drawn price tags. Ethan was about to respond when the rumble of an engine caught their attention. A sleek black Tesla slowed down near their stand. The twins straightened up, putting on their best smiles as the passenger window rolled down. A man in his early 50s peered out, sunglasses masking his eyes. "What are you selling there?" he called out. "Toys, sir," Ethan replied, stepping forward. "The best toys. All gently used." "Very gently," Ellie added quickly. "And it's for a good cause." The man seemed to hesitate, then pulled over and parked. As he stepped out of the car, the twins noticed his impeccable gray suit and polished leather shoes that seemed out of place in their modest neighborhood. "I'm looking for Kingston Avenue," the man said, approaching their stand. "Seems I took a wrong turn somewhere." "It's about 3 miles that way," Ethan pointed. "You have to make a left at the big oak tree, and then another left at the gas station." The man nodded, but his attention had shifted to their display of toys. His gaze lingered on the sign. "Help your mom," he asked, his voice softening. "What's that about?" The twins exchanged glances. "Our mom is sick," Ellie said, the practiced explanation catching in her throat. "She needs special medicine that costs a lot of money." "A lot," Ethan emphasized. "So we're selling our toys to help pay for it." The man crouched down to their level, removing his sunglasses to reveal kind eyes lined with crow's feet. "That's quite a project you've taken on. My name is Daniel, by the way. Daniel Harrington." "I'm Ethan, and this is my sister Ellie. We're twins." "I can see that," Daniel smiled. "So, tell me about these toys. Which ones are the most special?" Ellie pointed to her teddy bear. "That's Mr. Snuggles. He's really brave and has always kept the nightmares away. He's $5. And these are my racing cars," Ethan said, showing his collection. "The red one is the fastest. I won 3 playground races with it." For the next 15 minutes, Daniel listened as the twins described each item with the earnestness only children can muster. He asked questions and handled each toy with respect, acknowledging the sacrifice each represented. "How much have you made so far?" he finally asked. $27.50, Ethan reported promptly. "But we've only been open a few hours." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "And how much does your mother's medicine cost?" The twins' shoulders slumped simultaneously. $30,000, Ellie whispered. Daniel carefully placed Mr. Snuggles back on the blanket. His expression was unreadable as he stood up, towering over the makeshift stand once more. "I'd like to buy something," he said, reaching for his wallet. "But I seem to have a problem." The twins waited anxiously. I don't have room for all these wonderful toys in my house, he continued. But I was wondering if I could help in another way. He pulled out a business card and handed it to Ethan. I'd like to talk to your mom. Is she home now? The card was simple but elegant. Daniel Harrington, CEO, Horizon Innovations. She's resting, Ellie said cautiously, their mother's warnings about strangers echoing in her mind. Daniel nodded in understanding. Smart to be careful. How about I buy this teddy bear for now, he said, handing Ellie a crisp $20 bill. No change needed. And I'll come back tomorrow, maybe with a better idea of how to help. Would that be okay? After a quick consultation with her brother, Ellie handed over Mr. Snuggles. He likes to be held when there's thunder, she instructed seriously. I'll remember that, Daniel promised, carefully taking the bear. As he walked back to his car, he paused. You two are doing something extraordinary, you know. Your mom must be very proud. As the black Tesla pulled away, Ethan looked at the business card again. Do you think he's really a CEO? Ellie watched the card disappear around the corner. I don't know, but he paid 4 times what Mr. Snuggles cost. And he's coming back tomorrow, Ethan added, a small spark of hope lighting his eyes. By sunset, the twins had earned a total of $62.20. They carefully counted the money at the kitchen table while their mother prepared a simple dinner of spaghetti, her movements slow but determined. You two were busy today, Sarah observed, stirring the sauce with one hand while the other pressed subtly against her side where the pain lingered. Mrs. Patterson told me about your toy sale. We made $62.20, Ethan announced proudly. Sarah turned from the stove, her pale face a mixture of confusion and concern. $62? For your toys? That's wonderful, but why are you selling your toys? Ellie clutched the small cash box tightly. It's for you, Mom. For your special medicine. Sarah's face crumpled as understanding dawned. She lowered herself into a chair, wincing slightly at the movement. Oh, my sweethearts. That medicine, it's not something we need to worry about right now. But we heard you talking to Aunt Jen, Ethan persisted. You said it could help you get better. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, collecting herself before reaching out to take her children's hands. Listen to me, both of you. It's not your job to worry about adult problems. Your job is to be kids, to play and learn and grow. I'm doing everything I can to get well, and there are many treatments we're trying. But this one could be the best chance, Ellie said, repeating the words they'd overheard. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Come here, she whispered, opening her arms. The twins moved into their mother's embrace, careful of the tender spots they knew to avoid. They breathed in her familiar scent of vanilla lotion and the faint antiseptic smell that now seemed to cling to her skin. I love you both more than anything in this world, Sarah murmured against their hair. And I promise I'm doing everything possible to stay with you for a very long time. But I never, ever want you to think that my health is your responsibility. Do you understand? They nodded against her shoulders, but their eyes met over their mother's back in silent agreement. They would continue with their plan. Neither mentioned Daniel Harrington or his promise to return. As they set up their stand the next morning, the twins were more determined than ever. They'd added books and video games to their inventory, hoping to attract more customers. Do you think he'll really come back? Ellie asked, arranging a stack of dog-eared chapter books. Ethan shrugged. Rich people probably forget promises all the time. But at precisely 11 o'clock, the black Tesla appeared again. This time, Daniel wasn't alone. A woman in a pantsuit emerged from the passenger side, carrying a tablet. Good morning, Daniel called out cheerfully, approaching their stand. I see business is open for the day. This is my assistant, Ms. Chun. The woman nodded politely. Hello, Ellie. Hello, Ethan. Mr. Harrington has told me all about your impressive enterprise. Daniel crouched down to examine their expanded inventory. I see you've added some new items. Very smart business strategy. Mom doesn't know you're coming, Ethan blurted out. We didn't tell her. Daniel's expression softened. I thought that might be the case. Would it be okay if we spoke with her today? I have some ideas that might help, but I'd need to discuss them with your mother. The twins hesitated, their protective instincts flaring. She gets tired easily, Ellie explained, and sometimes the medicines make her feel sick. We'll be very brief, Daniel assured them, and if she's not feeling up to visitors, we can come back another time. After a wordless consultation, the twins agreed. Ethan remained at the stand while Ellie led Daniel and Ms. Chun to their modest 2-story home. Through the kitchen window, Sarah could be seen washing breakfast dishes, her movements slow but methodical. "Mom," Ellie called as they entered. "There's someone who wants to talk to you." Sarah turned, her face showing momentary confusion at the strangers in her kitchen. She automatically touched her headscarf, securing it over her thinning hair. "I'm so sorry to intrude, Mrs. Morgan," Daniel said, stepping forward with an extended hand. "My name is Daniel Harrington. I met your remarkable children yesterday at their toy sale." Sarah shook his hand, her puzzled gaze moving between Daniel and her daughter. "Please call me Sarah. And it's no intrusion, though I'm a bit confused." Ms. Chun stepped forward. "Perhaps we could sit down for a few minutes? Mr. Harrington would like to discuss something with you." Sarah gestured to the kitchen table, her teacher's hospitality overriding her uncertainty. "Of course. Ellie, would you mind checking on your brother? I'm sure Mrs. Larson next door would appreciate if you watched her stand from her porch." Ellie reluctantly left, casting a final curious glance at the adults. As Sarah offered coffee that Daniel politely declined, she noticed the business card he placed on the table. Her eyes widened slightly. "Horizon Innovations. You're that Daniel Harrington." He nodded, seemingly uncomfortable with the recognition. "I am. But today, I'm just someone who is incredibly moved by what your children are doing." Over the next 20 minutes, Daniel explained how he'd stumbled upon the twin sale while lost on his way to a meeting. He described their dedication, their clear love for their mother, and how their story had affected him deeply. "Ms. Chun has researched the experimental treatment you're seeking," Daniel said gently. "The CAR T-cell therapy at Westlake Medical Center." Sarah's face paled. "How did you?" "Your children are very forthcoming," Ms. Chun explained kindly. "They're determined to raise the $30,000 you need." Sarah pressed her palms against her eyes. "I never wanted them to worry about this. They must have overheard. I'm trying so hard to protect them from the worst of it." "They know more than you think," Daniel said softly. "Children always do. And they're channeling their fear into action, which is actually quite healthy. But selling their beloved toys." Sarah's voice broke. Daniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Mrs. Morgan, Sarah, I'd like to help. My foundation specializes in funding cutting-edge medical treatments for individuals who fall through the cracks of our healthcare system. The work your children are doing, it's inspired me. I'd like to cover the costs of your treatment." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You can't be serious. You don't even know me." "I know enough," Daniel replied. "I know you've raised two extraordinary children who are willing to sacrifice their most precious possessions to help you. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your worth to this world." Ms. Chin slid a folder across the table. "This explains the Foundation's assistance program. There are no strings attached, no repayment required. We simply ask that when you're well, you consider sharing your story to help us reach others in similar situations." Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the folder. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept the help," Daniel said simply. "Not for my sake, but for those two amazing children out there who love you more than their toys." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. 15 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. We had all the money in the world for treatments, but it was too late by the time we knew what we were fighting. Since then, I've made it my mission to give others the chance we never had." He smiled softly. "And sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, even when we're lost and looking for Kingston Avenue." Outside, unaware of the conversation unfolding in their kitchen, the twins made another sale, 3 comic books to the mailman for $4. They carefully added the money to their cash box, proudly noting that their total now stood at $78.20. "Only $29,921.80 to go," Ethan calculated, his expression determined rather than daunted by the enormous sum still ahead. "We'll get there," Ellie assured him, adjusting her homemade "Help Our Mom" sign to catch the midday sun. "We have to." 2 weeks after Daniel Harrington's unexpected appearance in their lives, the Morgan household was transformed. Not physically. The modest 2-bedroom home with its aging fence and creaking porch swing remained the same, but a current of cautious hope had replaced the undercurrent of dread that had permeated their lives for months. Sarah sat in Dr. Lewis's office, staring at the treatment schedule in her hands. The experimental CAR T-cell therapy would begin the following Monday. The clinical trial that had seemed like an unreachable lifeline was now her reality, thanks to the Harrington Foundation's intervention. "I still can't believe this is happening," she murmured to her sister Jen, who had driven her to the appointment. Jen squeezed her hand. "Believe it, and start focusing on getting well, instead of how to pay for getting well." "The twins think they made this happen," Sarah said, her voice catching. "They've raised almost $200 selling their toys. They're so proud, they think their little sale convinced Mr. Harrington to help." "In a way, it did," Jen pointed out. "If they hadn't set up that stand, he never would have stopped." Dr. Lewis returned with the final paperwork, his typically reserved demeanor softened by a rare smile. "Everything is in order, Sarah. The foundation's payment has been processed, and we're set to begin on Monday. This treatment has shown remarkable promise for cases like yours." Hope was a dangerous thing when you were a single mother with stage 3 lymphoma, Sarah had learned. It could crush you when it disappeared. But for the first time since her diagnosis, she allowed herself to fully embrace it. At home, Ellie and Ethan had transformed the living room into what they called Mom's Recovery Headquarters. A hand-drawn chart tracked the days until treatment would begin. They'd arranged Sarah's favorite books, fuzzy socks, and herbal teas on a small table within easy reach of the couch. "We made chicken soup," Ethan announced as Sarah and Jen entered. "From the can, but we added extra noodles." "And we picked flowers for your bedroom," Ellie added, pointing to a jam jar filled with black-eyed Susans from their backyard. Sarah gathered them into a gentle hug. "What would I do without my amazing team?" That evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with a blank thank-you card. How did one properly thank a stranger for potentially saving their life? For giving their children more years with their mother? Words seemed wholly inadequate. The business card Daniel had left included his direct email. Sarah had been surprised. CEOs of billion-dollar tech companies didn't typically share personal contact information with strangers. But then, nothing about their interaction had been typical. "Dear Mr. Harrington," she began, then crossed it out. Too formal. "Dear Daniel, I've started and rewritten this letter a dozen times, and I still can't find the right words to express what your generosity means to our family. Thank you seems insufficient for giving me a fighting chance to see my children grow up." The twins continue their toy sale, insisting that the money they raise should go to help someone else now that my treatment is covered. "When I suggested we use it to celebrate once I'm better," Ethan said, "but Mom, Mr. Harrington didn't help you because he wanted something back." They've learned a powerful lesson about generosity that will shape them forever. "I begin treatment on Monday. Whatever the outcome, please know that you've given us the greatest gift possible, hope and time together without the shadow of financial impossibility hanging over us. With deepest gratitude, Sarah Morgan and Ellie and Ethan." She sealed the card, planning to mail it in the morning. As she turned off the kitchen lights, her gaze caught on a printout of her latest scan, results taped to the refrigerator, another element of Mom's Recovery Headquarters. The cancer was still there, lurking in her lymph nodes, but for the first time, it seemed less like an invincible enemy. The following Monday marked the beginning of Sarah's treatment journey. The procedure itself was deceptively simple. Her T cells were collected, sent to a lab to be genetically modified to recognize and fight her cancer cells, then rain-fused into her bloodstream. The complexity and the hope lay in the science happening at the cellular level, invisible to the naked eye. While Sarah underwent her first treatment, the twins continued their toy sale with renewed purpose. They'd expanded their operation, now accepting donations from neighbors and classmates who had heard about their cause. Their focus had shifted. The money they raised would go to the children's ward at Westlake Medical Center, where they'd encountered other kids whose parents were fighting similar battles. "I think we should make a sign explaining where the money goes now," Ellie suggested as they sorted through a box of donated action figures on their front lawn. Ethan nodded seriously. "People like to know they're helping something specific. Mr. Harrington said that's important in business." The black Tesla had become a familiar sight in their neighborhood. Daniel visited once a week, ostensibly to check on Sarah's progress for the Foundation's records, but the visits had evolved into something more personal. He would bring books recommended by his sister, a fellow lymphoma survivor, and sometimes stayed for dinner, insisting on ordering takeout to give Sarah a break from cooking. During one such dinner, as the twins cleared the table, Daniel watched Sarah laugh at something Ethan said, a genuine laugh that reached her eyes. Despite the headscarf covering her now-bare scalp and the pronounced hollows of her cheeks, there was vibrant life in her expression. "The first round is working," she told him quietly as the twins disappeared into the kitchen. Dr. Lewis is cautiously optimistic. The tumors are already showing signs of regression. Daniel's relief was palpable. "That's incredible news, Sarah." "It's early days," she cautioned. "There could still be complications, relapses, but it's the best possible start." She twisted her paper napkin, a habit Daniel had noticed emerged when she was gathering courage. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why do you keep coming back?" "The foundation has done more than enough. You've fulfilled whatever obligation you felt toward us." Daniel considered her question carefully. "I've supported hundreds of patients through the foundation. Usually my involvement is limited to approving the funding and perhaps receiving updates about outcomes. But your family—" He paused, searching for the right words. "The twins remind me of myself and my sister when we were young. That same determination, the belief that love could overcome anything. Watching them fight so hard for you stirred something I thought I'd buried years ago." "What's that?" "Hope," he said simply. "Not just for patients to survive, but for life to be meaningful during and after cancer. For joy to exist alongside struggle." He smiled self-consciously. "I hope that doesn't sound too sentimental." Sarah shook her head. "It sounds honest. And I understand. Before the diagnosis, I was just focused on getting through each day, paying bills, managing work, and parenting. Now, every moment feels significant. Every laugh with the twins is a victory. Every morning I wake up is a gift." From the kitchen came the sound of childish bickering over whose turn it was to dry the dishes, followed by Ellie's exasperated, "Fine, I'll wash and dry, and you can just stand there being useless." Sarah laughed. "Well, most moments are gifts. Some are just real life with 10-year-olds. Daniel's visits became a bright spot in the often grueling treatment schedule. The twins adored him, particularly after he helped them build a more professional-looking stand for their continuing toy sale. He never arrived empty-handed, bringing small, thoughtful gifts. Science kits for the twins, herbal tea for Sarah that helped with her nausea, books they all enjoyed. "He likes you," Jen commented during one of her weekly visits, watching from the window as Daniel helped the twins reorganize their inventory outside. Sarah nearly choked on her tea. "Don't be ridiculous. He feels responsible for us somehow." "Sarah Morgan, are you blind? The man is smitten. He looks at you like you hung the moon." "I'm a cancer patient with 2 kids and more medical debt than I care to think about, despite his help with experimental treatment. I'm hardly a catch." Jen rolled her eyes. "First, you're a survivor in progress, not just a cancer patient. Second, those 2 amazing kids are assets, not liabilities. And third, he's clearly not concerned about your finances. Even if what you're suggesting were true, which it isn't, I can't think about that right now. My entire focus has to be on getting well for Ellie and Ethan." "And what about after?" Jen pressed. "When you're well. Because you will be, Sarah." "And then what?" Sarah watched through the window as Daniel demonstrated to Ethan how to make a paper airplane that would fly farther than his current design. Ellie was keeping score, her face alight with competitive joy. "Then I go back to being a mom and a teacher," Sarah said firmly. "That's enough." But that night, after everyone had gone and the twins were asleep, Sarah found herself lingering over a text from Daniel, checking on how she was feeling after the day's treatment. His genuine concern touched something in her that had been dormant since her divorce 4 years earlier. She had closed that part of herself off, convinced that romantic love was a luxury she could no longer afford as a single mother. Now, in the quiet of her kitchen, with the moonlight streaming through the window and the faint smell of the dinner Daniel had brought lingering in the air, she allowed herself to wonder about possibilities beyond survival. 3 months into Sarah's treatment, the Morgan house was buzzing with activity. The treatment was working better than even Dr. Lewis had anticipated. The cancer was retreating, though the battle was far from over. Sarah still had days where she could barely leave her bed when the side effects of treatment left her drained and nauseated. But there were also increasingly good days, days when she could help the twins with homework or sit outside and watch their ever-expanding toy sale operation. The twins had raised over $2,000 for the children's ward, an accomplishment that had earned them recognition in the local newspaper. The article, titled "Twins Toy Sale Inspires Community Support for Cancer Patients," included a photo of Ellie and Ethan with their stand, now professionally painted with a logo designed by one of Daniel's company artists. What the article didn't mention was the profound change in the Morgan household. Sarah's prognosis had shifted from guarded to cautiously positive. The twins smiled more easily, the tight worry around their eyes gradually disappearing. And Daniel had become a fixture in their lives, his visits no longer needing justification or explanation. On a warm Saturday in September, 4 months after their chance encounter, Daniel arrived with a proposal. "I was thinking," he said as he helped Sarah prepare lunch while the twins manned their stand outside, "that the 4 of us might take a day trip next weekend. There's a science museum in the city that has a new exhibit on cancer research. I thought the twins might find it interesting, seeing what's happening at the cellular level with your treatment." Sarah paused in slicing tomatoes. "That's thoughtful, but I'm not sure I'll be up for a full day out. The last treatment hit me pretty hard." "We could play it by ear," Daniel suggested. "My car will be available, and the museum has plenty of places to rest. But if you're not feeling well, we can reschedule." Sarah studied him, noting the care he took to give her control over the situation. So different from her ex-husband, who had viewed her input as optional in most decisions. "Let's plan for it tentatively," she agreed. "The twins would love it. Science is Ethan's best subject." Daniel smiled. "I know. He showed me his last test score. 98%. "You two are thick as thieves lately," Sarah observed. "He asked me if you could come to his science fair next month." "I'd be honored," Daniel said sincerely. "Unless, would that be overstepping?" Sarah considered this. No, she decided. It wouldn't be. The twins' father has been absent for years. He sends birthday cards sometimes, calls on holidays. But day-to-day support? That's been just me, and occasionally Jen when she can make the trip from Chicago. "The twins are lucky to have you," Daniel said. "Not everyone gets a parent who would fight so hard to stay with them." "I'm the lucky one," Sarah countered. "And speaking of the twins, I have something to show you." She pulled a folder from a kitchen drawer. "Ellie made this. She asked me to give it to you." Inside was a childish but detailed drawing of 4 stick figures, 2 small ones with identical faces, 1 taller female figure with a headscarf, and 1 tall male figure in what appeared to be a business suit. They were all holding hands under a rainbow. Above the drawing in careful block letters were the words, "Our family and M.R. Harrington." Daniel stared at the drawing, visibly moved. I don't know what to say." "You've become important to them," Sarah said softly. "To us. Whatever your reasons for continuing to be part of our lives, we're grateful." Their eyes met across the kitchen counter, the unspoken shifting between them like a tangible current. Daniel cleared his throat. "Sarah, The back door burst open as the twins tumbled in. "Mom, we sold the entire box of Legos," Ethan announced triumphantly, "for $30. And Mrs. Johnson from the bank came by and said she'd match whatever we earned this weekend," Ellie added breathlessly. The moment between the adults dissolved, but something had changed. An acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing beneath the surface of their evolving friendship. The Science Museum trip the following weekend was a resounding success. Sarah felt stronger than she had in months, able to walk through the exhibits with only occasional breaks. The twins were fascinated by the cancer research display, asking intelligent questions that impressed even the museum docent. "That's our mom," Ellie informed a stranger who commented on their knowledge. "She's beating cancer with special T cells that eat the bad cells." "Not exactly eating them," Ethan corrected pedantically. "They're recognizing and targeting them for destruction by the immune system." Daniel laughed. He's been reading medical journals online. I'm fairly certain he understands the treatment better than I do at this point. As they walked through the museum's planetarium exhibit, Sarah found herself standing beside Daniel, watching the twins excitedly identify constellations on the ceiling display. "Thank you for today," she said quietly. "It feels almost normal, like we're just a regular family on a weekend outing, not defined by cancer and treatments and fear." Daniel's hand found hers in the dim light of the planetarium. "You are more than your diagnosis, Sarah. You always have been." She didn't pull her hand away. Instead, her fingers intertwined with his, an acceptance of something neither had yet put into words. That evening, after the twins had gone to bed exhausted from their day of exploration, Sarah and Daniel sat on the porch swing, mugs of tea in hand. "I have my final scan next week," Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Dr. Lewis will determine if the treatment has been successful enough to stop, or if we need another round." Daniel nodded. "I've been in touch with him. Not about your specific results, doctor-patient confidentiality, but about the treatment protocol in general. The outcomes have been even better than expected for most patients in the trial." "I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high," Sarah admitted. "But I feel different. stronger. The night sweats have stopped, and I've gained back 5 pounds. Whatever the results, Daniel said carefully, I want you to know that my support, the foundation support, isn't contingent on any specific outcome. We're committed to your care for as long as you need it. Sarah turned to face him fully. Is that why you think I've been worried? About the financial support? Daniel looked surprised. I just wanted to reassure you. Daniel, Sarah said, setting down her mug, I think we need to address the elephant on this porch swing. Your foundation is helping with my medical expenses, and I will be eternally grateful for that. But these visits, the time you spend with us, that's gone far beyond professional obligation. It has, he agreed quietly. The twins adore you. And I. She hesitated. I've come to care for you in a way I didn't expect. But I'm still in the middle of the hardest fight of my life. I can't offer any certainties. Daniel took her hand. I'm not asking for certainties. Life doesn't offer those, as we both know too well. What I feel for you, for the twins, it snuck up on me. I wasn't looking for this. After losing Marissa, I thought that part of my life was over. And now I find myself looking forward to weekends in a way I haven't in 15 years. I check my phone constantly for texts from you. I worry about you on your treatment days. I marvel at those incredible children of yours. He smiled softly. I think about you when I should be paying attention in board meetings. Sarah laughed. That can't be good for Horizon Innovations shareholders. Probably not, he agreed with a chuckle. But it's been very good for me. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, allowing herself to accept the comfort of his presence without analyzing it too deeply. Let's get through this final scan. One step at a time. The day of the final scan arrived with a crisp autumn chill in the air. The twins went to school with explicit instructions to behave for their substitute teacher, as Jen would be picking them up at dismissal time. Daniel drove Sarah to the hospital, waiting patiently through the hours of testing and consultation. When Dr. Lewis finally called them into his office, Sarah's hand found Daniel's instinctively. The results are excellent, Dr. Lewis began, turning his computer screen so they could see the before and after images. The largest tumors have reduced by over 90%, and the smaller ones are no longer detectable. Your blood work is approaching normal ranges. Sarah stared at the images, unable to fully process what she was seeing. Does that mean? It means the treatment has been remarkably successful, Dr. Lewis confirmed. I would classify you as in remission, Sarah. We'll need regular follow-ups, of course, and there's always a possibility of recurrence that we'll monitor closely. But for now, you've won this battle. The words hung in the air like delicate crystal, beautiful but almost too fragile to touch. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face before she even realized she was crying. Daniel's arm slipped around her shoulders, steadying her. Thank you, she managed to whisper to Dr. Lewis. Thank you for everything. The doctor smiled, the professional distance in his expression softening. You did the hard work, Sarah, and you had excellent support. He nodded toward Daniel. The Harrington Foundation's involvement in this trial has been invaluable. We're seeing similar results in other patients. Outside the hospital, standing in the parking lot with the October sun warming their faces, the reality finally began to sink in. Sarah was in remission. The shadow that had been hanging over their family was lifting. I don't know what to say, she told Daniel, her voice still unsteady. He took her hands in his. You don't have to say anything. Just promise me you'll tell the twins the good news before Ethan explodes from anticipation. He's been texting me every 30 minutes asking for updates. Sarah laughed through her tears. He's been texting you. Daniel showed her his phone screen, filled with messages from Ethan's supervised kid's phone. Is Mom okay? Did the doctor say anything yet? Are the scans done? Mr. Harrington, please tell Mom we love her. Ellie says to tell Mom her brave cells won. Oh my goodness, Sarah wiped her eyes. When did he get your number? About 2 months ago. He said it was for emergency toy sale consultations, but mostly he asks me science questions I have to Google to answer. The drive to the twins' elementary school was a blur of emotion. Sarah alternated between tearful relief and almost giddy laughter. Plans she hadn't allowed herself to make suddenly seemed possible again, seeing the twins graduate from high school, returning to full-time teaching, perhaps even traveling during summer breaks. And alongside these dreams, new ones were forming, tentative but growing stronger, dreams that included the man beside her, who had changed their lives through a chance wrong turn on a summer day. The Morgan twins had faced enough disappointment in their young lives to be suspicious of good news. When Sarah and Daniel arrived at school to pick them up early, both children studied their mother's face with the intensity of seasoned detectives. "Did the doctor say you're better?" Ethan asked directly, his small body tense with anticipation. Sarah crouched down to their level, right there in the school's front office with the secretary pretending not to listen. "The treatment worked," she said simply. "I'm in remission." Ellie's eyes widened. "So the cancer is gone?" "All gone." "The doctors will need to check me regularly to make sure it doesn't come back," Sarah explained carefully. "But right now, yes, they can't find any more cancer cells." The twins exchanged a look, their identical expressions shifting from cautious hope to pure joy in the span of seconds. They launched themselves at their mother, nearly knocking her over with the force of their embrace. "I knew it would work," Ethan declared, his voice muffled against Sarah's shoulder. "I calculated the probability based on the clinical trial results Mr. Harrington showed me." Ellie pulled back to look at Daniel, who stood watching the reunion with suspiciously bright eyes. "Did you know already? Is that why you're here too?" Daniel shook his head. "I just came for support. I was as nervous as you two were." "We should celebrate," Ellie announced decisively. "With cake. And maybe fireworks." "Definitely cake, possibly fireworks," Sarah laughed, rising to her feet with the child still clinging to each hand. "But first, I think someone should call Aunt Jen." The celebration that evening was simple but joyful. Jen drove in from a neighboring town where she'd been staying during Sarah's treatment. The kitchen table was laden with the twins' favorite foods, pizza, garlic bread, and a somewhat lopsided cake they had insisted on baking themselves with minimal adult supervision. To Mom, Ethan proposed, raising his glass of sparkling apple juice. "And her super tea cells." "And to Mr. Harrington," Ellie added, "for finding our toy sale." "And to you too," Daniel countered, "for being brave enough to start that sale in the first place." As the evening progressed, a sense of comfortable normalcy settled over the Morgan home. Jen and the twins played a raucous board game in the living room, while Sarah and Daniel washed dishes side by side. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked quietly, passing him a plate to dry. "With the treatment." Dr. Lewis outlined the follow-up protocol. "Not with the treatment," Sarah interrupted gently. "With us. With this, whatever this is between us." Daniel set down the dish towel. "What do you want to happen?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "For months ago, my only focus was surviving for my children. Relationships weren't even on my radar. But now..." She glanced toward the living room, where Ethan was dramatically accusing his aunt of cheating. "Now I'm starting to think about living again, not just surviving. And when I think about that life, you're in it." Daniel's expression softened. "I'd like that very much. But there's something I need to be upfront about, Sarah." Her heart clenched with sudden anxiety. "What is it?" "The Foundation's support for your treatment will continue regardless of our personal relationship. If you decide you'd rather we just remain friends, or even if you'd prefer I step back entirely, your medical care is secure." Relief washed over her. "That's what you're worried about? That I might think you'd withdraw support if I didn't, what? Date you?" Daniel shrugged, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I wanted to be clear about the boundaries. This situation is unconventional, to say the least." Sarah dried her hands and turned to face him fully. "Daniel Harrington, in case I haven't been clear, I care about you. Not because of what you've done for us, though I'll be eternally grateful for that, but because of who you are. The man who sits for hours helping Ethan with science projects. The man who found special art supplies for Ellie when she decided to become an illustrator. The man who brings me tea that helps with nausea and never, ever makes me feel like a charity case." She took a deep breath. "So yes, I want you in our lives. But we need to take this slowly. The twins have been through enough changes, and I'm still recovering. Can we agree to that?" Daniel's smile was worth every moment of uncertainty. "We can agree to whatever pace works for you and the twins. I'm not going anywhere." From the living room came Ethan's indignant voice. "And Jen, you can't put a hotel on Boardwalk yet. You have to have 4 houses first." "I think we're needed for referee duty," Sarah laughed, the tension broken. As they moved to join the others, Daniel caught her hand. "For the record," he said softly, "meeting you and the twins was the best wrong turn I've ever taken." Over the following months, life settled into a new rhythm for the Morgan family. Sarah's strength returned gradually, allowing her to resume teaching part-time by January. The twins continued their toy sale on weekends, expanding their mission to include raising funds for families dealing with all sorts of medical crises. Daniel's presence in their lives evolved naturally. Weekend visits became regular dinners. Occasional outings became standing family traditions. By spring, no one questioned when he arrived with groceries or stayed to help with homework. The four of them had formed a unit that somehow felt both new and as if it had always existed. One evening in April, nearly a year after their first meeting, Daniel sat on the back porch with Sarah, watching the twins test a model rocket they had built together. "I've been thinking," he said casually, "about making some changes." Sarah turned to him, curious. "What kind of changes?" "Horizon Innovations has grown beyond what I ever imagined. The board has been pushing me to delegate more, focus on strategic vision rather than day-to-day operations." "And how do you feel about that?" Daniel watched as Ethan made final adjustments to the rocket's fins while Ellie documented the process with careful notes. "I think they're right. I've been so focused on building the company that I forgot to build a life." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I had a whole speech planned. Something eloquent about chance encounters and second chances at happiness. But the truth is simpler than that." He opened the box, revealing a modest but elegant diamond ring. "I love you, Sarah. I love the twins. And I want to be part of your family officially if you'll have me." Sarah stared at the ring, emotions washing over her in waves. "The twins." "Already know," Daniel assured her. "I spoke with them last week. They had conditions." Despite her shock, Sarah laughed. "Conditions? What kind of conditions?" "Ethan insisted that science projects must remain a priority in our household budget. And Ellie demanded that I learn how to braid hair properly because apparently I do it all wrong." His expression grew more serious. "But mostly, they wanted to make sure you would be happy. That we would take care of you together." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "They said that." "They did. And I promised them I would spend the rest of my life trying to make all three of you happy. If you'll let me." Before Sarah could answer, a whoop of triumph came from the yard as the rocket launched, soaring into the evening sky in a perfect arc. "Mom, did you see that?" Ethan called excitedly. "It worked." Sarah looked from her children's joyful faces to the man beside her, the man who had entered their lives through serendipitous wrong turn and changed everything. "Yes," she said softly, both to Ethan and to Daniel's proposal. "It worked perfectly." The wedding was held the following summer in the Morgans' backyard. It was a small, intimate affair, exactly what Sarah and Daniel wanted. The twins played central roles, Ellie as the flower girl and ring bearer combined. She had insisted on handling both jobs, and Ethan as Daniel's best man, a responsibility he took with utmost seriousness. Jen wiped away tears as she watched her sister walk down the makeshift aisle, looking healthier and happier than she had in years. The headscarf that had become Sarah's signature during treatment was gone, replaced by a crown of fresh flowers woven into her short, growing hair. Under an arch of wildflowers, with the twins standing close by, Sarah and Daniel exchanged vows that acknowledged the unconventional beginning of their relationship. "I found you by getting lost," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "And in finding you and these amazing children, I found my way home." Sarah's vows were equally heartfelt. "You came into our lives when we were at our lowest point. You saw strength in us when we couldn't see it ourselves. You believed in possibilities when they seemed impossible. Today, I promise to face whatever comes next, the joys and the challenges, with the same courage and hope you've shown us." The twins had insisted on adding their own promises to the ceremony. Ethan stepped forward first, his freckled face solemn. "I promise to share my dad with you," he said to Daniel, his young voice clear, in the quiet garden. "And to let you be my dad too, even though I already have one somewhere else." Ellie's turn came next, her handwritten notes clutched tightly in small hands. "I promise that we'll be a real family with all the good parts and even the hard parts. And I promise to tell you if you're making Mom sad, but I don't think you will." There wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering as the four of them embraced, no longer separate units brought together by chance, but family bound by choice and love. 2 years later, the Morgan Harrington household had settled into rhythms that blended their separate lives into one cohesive unit. They had moved to a larger home halfway between Sarah's school and Daniel's office, but kept the original Morgan house as a rental property, a safety net that Sarah had insisted upon, her practical nature still wary of fairy tale endings. The The twins, now 12, had blossomed under the stability of their expanded family. Ethan's scientific interests had developed into a genuine aptitude, encouraged by Daniel's connections to research facilities and universities. Ellie's artistic talents were flourishing under the guidance of an art mentor. Daniel had introduced her to a former Horizon Innovations designer who specialized in digital illustration. Their famous toy sale had evolved into the Morgan Twins Foundation, a registered nonprofit that raised funds for families facing catastrophic medical expenses. What had begun with 2 children selling beloved toys on a summer day had grown into an organization that had helped dozens of families navigate the financial devastation that often accompanied serious illness. Sarah remained in remission, though each checkup still brought a flutter of anxiety. The experience had changed her permanently, not just physically with the silver streaks that now ran through her regrown hair or the surgical scars that marked her body, but in deeper ways. She lived with a keen awareness of life's fragility and an appreciation for its everyday wonders that she tried to impart to her children. Daniel had kept his promise to step back from the daily operations of Horizon Innovations, taking on a more strategic role that allowed him to be present for family dinners and weekend activities. The board had initially been skeptical, but the company continued to thrive under the leadership team he had carefully built, proving that his value lay in vision rather than micromanagement. One evening, as Daniel helped Ellie with her homework while Sarah and Ethan prepared dinner, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. "I'll get it," Daniel called, setting aside Ellie's art history textbook. When he opened the door, he found himself face to face with a man whose features were startlingly familiar, the same hazel eyes and cleft chin that he saw every day in Ethan's face. "Hello," the man said, shifting uncomfortably on the porch. "I'm looking for Sarah Morgan. The neighbor said she might live here now." Daniel felt a protective instinct rise immediately. "May I ask who's inquiring?" "I'm James Morgan, her ex-husband." The man glanced past Daniel, trying to see into the house. "Are the kids here? I've been trying to reach them." Before Daniel could respond, Sarah appeared behind him, drawn by the unfamiliar voice. She froze, her face draining of color. "James," she said flatly, "this is unexpected." "I tried calling," he replied defensively. "Your number changed." 3 years ago, Sarah pointed out, "when I got sick. The kids have phones. My email hasn't changed." An awkward silence fell, broken only when Ethan's voice called from inside. "Mom? Is everything okay?" Sarah hesitated, then called back. "Everything's fine, honey. Just give us a minute." She turned to her ex-husband. "Why are you here, James? Really?" The man had the grace to look ashamed. "I saw an article about the Twins Foundation, about what they did when you were sick, and how they've helped all those other families. It mentioned—" He glanced at Daniel. "It mentioned that they have a new stepfather. I wanted to see them." Daniel felt Sarah tense beside him. "Why don't we talk outside?" she suggested to James, her voice carefully controlled. She turned to Daniel. "Could you check on dinner? I'll be right back." Daniel nodded, respecting her need to handle this herself, though every instinct urged him to stay close. As he reluctantly returned to the kitchen, he found both twins hovering near the doorway, clearly aware that something significant was happening. "Was that Dad?" Ethan asked directly, his expression unreadable. Daniel had never lied to the children and wouldn't start now. "Yes. Your mom is talking to him outside." Ellie's face clouded with confusion and something like anger. "Why is he here? He doesn't even send birthday cards anymore." "I don't know, sweetheart," Daniel admitted. "But your mom will handle it, and then we'll all talk about it together if you want to." On the porch, Sarah crossed her arms, the evening chill having little to do with her suddenly cold demeanor. 3 years, James. You've seen the twins exactly twice in 3 years. "I know," he acknowledged. "I messed up. But seeing that article, knowing how close I came to losing you, to the kids losing their mother, it made me realize what a fool I've been. The kids almost lost me, and that's what made you realize you should be in their lives." Sarah's voice was incredulous. "Not their birthdays or school plays, or the fact that they're growing up without knowing their father?" James had the decency to look shamed. "I've made mistakes. A lot of them. But I want to try to be better. For Ellie and Ethan." Sarah studied the man she had once loved, seeing the familiar features that her children had inherited, along with the signs of hard living that had emerged since their divorce, the slight paunch, the lines of stress around his eyes, the gray threading through his dark hair. She felt a complex mixture of emotions, anger at his prolonged absence, concern about the impact his sudden appearance would have on the twins, and unexpectedly, a kind of pity. "They have a good life now, James," she said finally, her voice softening slightly. "A stable home. Daniel loves them like they're his own. The foundation gives them purpose. They're thriving." "I'm glad," James said and seemed to mean it. "I'm not here to disrupt that. I'd like to know my children. Maybe start with occasional visits. I've moved back to the area for work. I'll be just a few towns over." Sarah considered her options. She could refuse, protect the twins from another potential disappointment. But they were getting older, asking more questions about their biological father. Perhaps it would be better for them to know the real James, flaws and all, than to wonder. "It's not my decision alone," she said finally. "It's up to the twins if they want to see you. And if they do, we start small. Supervised visits. No promises you can't keep. And you need to understand and respect Daniel's role in their lives." James nodded, relief evident in his expression. "That's more than fair. Thank you, Sarah. And I'm really glad you're okay, that you beat the cancer." In the kitchen, Daniel was doing his best to maintain normalcy, helping the twins finish dinner preparations while knowing their minds were entirely focused on the conversation happening outside. When Sarah finally returned, her expression was composed but troubled. "Dad wants to see us," Ethan asked immediately. Sarah nodded, sitting down at the kitchen table. "He would like to, but it's completely up to you two. No one is going to make you see him if you don't want to." The twins exchanged one of their wordless communications. Ellie spoke first. "Why now?" "Because of the article." "Partly," Sarah admitted. "He said it made him realize what he's been missing." "Will he leave again?" Ethan's voice was small, revealing the hurt beneath his usually confident exterior. Sarah reached for his hand. "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope not. But if you want to see him, we can arrange something simple, maybe lunch next weekend. Daniel and I would both be there." Daniel, who had remained silent, allowing Sarah to lead this difficult conversation, now spoke. "Nothing will change with us either way. You'll always have me, no matter what you decide about seeing your dad." Ellie looked at him gratefully. "We know. You're our real dad now." "But he's also your dad," Daniel said gently. "And it's okay to want to know him." After further discussion, the twins decided they would meet with James for lunch that weekend. The meal was awkward but civil, with James clearly trying his best to connect with children who had become strangers to him. Daniel and Sarah provided supportive buffers, stepping in when conversation lagged or tensions rose. Over the following months, James became a peripheral but present figure in the twins' lives. He attended Ethan's science fair, standing respectfully to the side, while Daniel helped with last-minute adjustments to the display. He came to Ellie's art show, purchasing one of her pieces and displaying genuine pride in her talent. The visits remained supervised and scheduled, but gradually, a cautious relationship began to form. For Sarah, watching this development brought mixed emotions. There was relief that the twins could finally know their biological father without the weight of abandonment hanging over them. There was lingering anger at James for his years of absence. But mostly, there was profound gratitude for the family they had built in spite of, or perhaps because of, the challenges they had faced. One evening, as spring turned to summer 3 years after their first meeting, Daniel found Sarah sitting on their back porch, watching the twins and their friends playing an elaborate game of capture the flag across their spacious backyard. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, joining her on the porch swing. Sarah smiled, leaning into his shoulder. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. 3 years ago, I was terrified of leaving them alone in the world. Now look at us." Daniel followed her gaze to where Ethan was strategizing with intense focus, while Ellie executed a daring run to capture the opposing team's flag. "They're quite something." "They are," Sarah agreed. "And so is this life we've built." She turned to face him. "Do you ever think about how many coincidences had to line up for us to find each other? You getting lost in our neighborhood that exact day. The twins deciding to sell their toys. You stopping to ask for directions." Daniel considered this. "I used to think of it as coincidence. Now I'm not so sure. What would you call it? Purpose, maybe? Or the universe's way of putting broken pieces together to make something whole again." He squeezed her hand. "Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just what happens when desperate love meets extraordinary generosity." Sarah watched as Ellie triumphantly held up the captured flag, Ethan cheering his sister on despite having lost. "I think," she said softly, "it's what happens when people choose hope over fear. When we decide that love is worth the risk. As the golden evening light bathed their yard, the sound of childish laughter rising into the summer air, Sarah felt a sense of completion that had once seemed impossible. The cancer that had nearly taken her from her children had instead led them to an expanded family, a meaningful mission, and a deeper appreciation for life's fragile beauty. And it had all begun with two determined children selling their beloved toys on a summer day, and a billionaire CEO who took a wrong turn at exactly the right moment. 5 years later, the auditorium buzzed with excitement as families filed in for Mapleton High School's annual award ceremony. In the front row, Sarah and Daniel sat with James, their once awkward co-parenting arrangement having evolved into a functional, if not entirely comfortable, relationship over the years. "They won't tell me which award they're getting," Sarah whispered to Daniel. "Do you know?" Daniel shook his head. They've been suspiciously tight-lipped. Even Ethan, who usually can't keep a secret to save his life. On stage, the principal approached the microphone. "Before we begin our regular academic and athletic awards, we have a special presentation. As many of you know, our school has been the proud home of the Morgan Twins Foundation for the past 7 years. What began as two 10-year-olds selling toys to help their mother has grown into an organization that has provided over $2 million in assistance to families facing medical crises." A screen behind the principal came to life, showing a photograph of Ellie and Ethan at their original toy stand. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the audience. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the Morgan Twins Foundation has been selected for the National Youth Humanitarian Award, which recognizes outstanding service by young people under the age of 18. Applause erupted as 17-year-old Ellie and Ethan walked onto the stage, poised and confident in a way that made Sarah's heart swell with pride. They had grown into remarkable young adults, Ethan tall and lanky with his father's build but Daniel's thoughtful demeanor, Ellie artistic and eloquent, her childhood creativity having matured into genuine talent. As they accepted the award, Ethan stepped up to the microphone. "When we started selling our toys 7 years ago, we just wanted to help our mom. We didn't know anything about foundations or nonprofits or grant applications. We just knew that when you love someone, you do whatever it takes to help them," Ellie continued, the twins still finishing each other's thoughts, as they had always done. "And then we learned that there were so many other families like ours, people facing impossible choices between medical treatment and financial ruin." Ethan nodded. "Our foundation exists because our mother taught us to be brave, even when things seem hopeless. Because our stepfather showed us that generosity can change lives. And because our biological dad," he nodded toward James in the audience, "taught us that it's never too late to try to be better." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes as Daniel squeezed her hand. James, sitting on her other side, gave her a respectful nod, acknowledging without words the journey they had all taken. The twins continued, describing how the foundation had expanded from toy sales to corporate partnerships, how they had developed a model for supporting families that addressed not just medical costs, but also the everyday expenses that could devastate households during health crises. "But what we're most proud of," Ellie concluded, "is that every single family we help knows that they're not alone. That no matter how dark things seem, there are people who care, who will stop and notice when you're struggling. Sometimes those people are strangers who become family. Sometimes they're billionaire CEOs who take wrong turns at exactly the right moment." The audience laughed, many of them familiar with the story of how Daniel had entered the Morgans' lives. "We accept this award on behalf of all the families who have taught us about courage," Ethan said. "And we dedicate it to our mother, Sarah Morgan Harrington, who showed us that even the biggest challenges can be faced with grace and determination." As the ceremony concluded and families gathered in the reception hall, Sarah found herself surrounded by her expanded family. Daniel discussing Ethan's college applications with earnest intensity. James showing Ellie brochures from art schools he thought she might consider. Her sister Jen, who had moved closer after Sarah's illness, chatting with other parents. "Mom," Ethan called, breaking away from a conversation with his science teacher. "Come meet Dr. Patil. She wants to talk about bringing the foundation's support model to the university hospital's pediatric oncology ward." As Sarah moved to join him, she caught Daniel's eye across the room. He smiled at her, that same warm, genuine smile that had first appeared on a summer day 7 years ago, when he crouched down to examine the treasures of two desperate children trying to save their mother. In that moment, surrounded by the life they had built from what once seemed like tragedy, Sarah felt the full circle of their journey. From the darkest days of her diagnosis to this celebration of her children's compassion and vision, they had traveled a path none of them could have imagined. That path had begun with a simple act, two children solving an adult problem the only way they knew how, by offering what was most precious to them. Their innocence and determination had triggered a chain of events that transformed not only their lives, but the lives of countless others. As she watched her children, nearly adults now, confident and purposeful, Sarah thought again of the fateful day when a wrong turn had led Daniel to their makeshift stand. How close they had come to never meeting. How many lives would have been different if he had found the correct route to his meeting that day? Some might call it luck or coincidence. Sarah preferred to think of it as proof that even in our darkest hours, unexpected light can find its way in, sometimes through the simplest acts of love and the most serendipitous of wrong turns. And as the Morgan twins stood surrounded by well-wishers, their faces bright with the knowledge that they had made a genuine difference in the world, Sarah knew that their lives would indeed never be the same, and that was the greatest blessing of all.